You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the best comic books of the week show here at Weird Science. And I'm going to be going through the books that I thought were pretty peachy keen. And if you had others that you liked, I always stress this at the beginning of this show and the preview show, is the idea that I would love to hear from people about the books that they really enjoyed this week, the books that they thought were great. If I end up not talking about one, it might be that I just didn't like it. It may be that I didn't get to read it because, lo and behold, a lot of the books that I'm going to be talking about are big two books. I had an awful week, and I still haven't read everything that I wanted to read for the week, but I did enjoy some things on the big two tip, and I do have, if you look at the screen, there is at least one indie book that I did love, even though I say love, I liked. It's a little bit over the top, but we'll get to that because we always do start on the DC side of things. And I also will tell everybody, if you're listening to this after the fact, if you're listening to the replay, we do end up doing this live every Sunday night, usually do it at 7. I end up starting this week at 7:15. I am having problems. We ended up having our regular DC Comics show go really, really long, and it took me hours to edit. Didn't get done until 6 or so this morning, and then got like an hour and a half of sleep. So it's killing me. When we're done here, I still actually do have to go and edit a couple things and put them up on a regular feed. I mean, the absolute show, and then I'm going to bed. I'm going to bed. Now, also, just to throw it out there at the beginning, if you do end up liking our podcast and you want more, please check out our Patreon. It helps us out for everything we do, but also you get a ton of other shows. And what you will really get this coming up week is the actual DC Comics podcast, because that will be Patreon only, because it is an annuals week, and every time we have an annuals week, the show is Patreon only. So you can go over at patreon.com/Weird Science, sign up for even a free trial. If you've never done that, you can get a 7-day free trial and listen to all of the stuff that you can for free to see if it's worth it. The link is in the show notes. And I am very, very tired. I just realized now. I thought I was okay beforehand, and now that I'm starting to talk, I'm like, woo-wee, I am tired here. But we're going to start with DC, as we always do, and that means that I'm going to talk about a pretty kick-butt book to start with, Absolute Wonder Woman #7. Written by Kelly Thompson, art by Mattia De Lulis. Every time I end up saying it, I say it different. Dustin Le Guin on a backup, the old Little Diana story, but mainly the big play is what's in the front up, which was really, really good. This two-parter comes to an end. You end up having a bunch of things set up to show that indeed Zeus has been the one that is kind of going against the Amazons. And then behind the scenes, a lot of the other gods and goddesses are working to help Diana out. They think that it was not fair what happened to her. And what happened to her was she got sent to hell. And kind of that play of, hey, Circe will be your mother, but Circe's not going to really pay attention to you. This is a way that we can kill you without really getting our hands dirty, because Circe's the one who will, oh no, Circe actually was a good mother, because lo and behold, Diana made her fall in love with her. So in this issue, you do end up having a lot of things involving Hades, Persephone, the idea that there are gods and goddesses going behind each other's backs to help Diana. And it really plays out with a kind of a play that you usually get, are all the gifts and all of the things that the goddess and gods end up giving Diana. This is a cool way that they end up not only saving her, but also allowing her, Persephone is specifically allowing her to return to hell so that she can visit her mom, Circe, for a month every year. I really liked it, and the art's incredible. The art is so good. And now, I mean, I hate to say it like, and now we go back to Hayden Sherman, but now we go back to Hayden Sherman. And I think that Hayden Sherman's art fits something like a Dark Pattern's great. That book, it feels like that's his style. the vastness and the epicness of the Wonder Woman, the Absolute Wonder Woman. I don't think that his art really does that justice, and it's not just the idea of, oh, his art's bad. It just doesn't fit it. I wouldn't want a Riley Rossimo on this book either, though I end up thinking that Riley Rossimo probably would have been okay on that Martian Manhunter, because I don't know what's going on in that. But again, I'm not going to put that book on, but I'm sure that some people will mention it when they talk about what books that they like. And since this is a live chat, I'm looking at the chat right now. Fear Monarch says it was a slow week. He spent most of the reading, or most of the week, reading and catching up on the last week's comics as well, and enjoyed those much more. I actually had some of my favorite books in a long time come out this week. I was just going to start listing them, but I'll be talking about them in a second. And Obama says, Absolute Wonder Woman was really good. The art on these last two issues were great. It was so good and fit the story really well. That's where it really goes with that idea. And again, saying Hayden Sherman is a better, I'm not going to say that. Way better than I could draw. But it didn't fit, it just doesn't fit it as well as this art here. And again, it's a shame that we're not going to continue it with this artist, but maybe, with a little bit of time and whatnot, Hayden Sherman can give us some stuff, because I did mention when we had our Absolute show that the covers by Hayden are pretty good. Like, those are more detailed and actually look pretty epic. So maybe that will be. Fear Monarch says, man, I've been hearing that Absolute Martian Manhunter is the best book of the Absolutes, and he's trying to rile me up. I think right now he's already trying it. Like, he thinks that Fear Monarch thinks that that's going to set off a 4.5-hour live stream is what he thinks that is, but it will not, because if that's the case, you'll be hearing me snore. Now, one of the funny things is, if you were at the show this morning, I ended up having the Comic Book Sunday Comic Talk show this morning. When I got done, I stop everything, whatnot, go take the dog for a walk. I'm doing these other things. I was planning on taking a nap, but I didn't. I come down here again to start up this and realize I never actually stopped the recording of the actual, podcast recording software, because sometimes I will end up using those, and I'll edit it down and put it out on the Patreon as an audio version of the thing. It was 6 hours and 45 minutes long is what it said, and I'm like, holy moly. Then I thought all the things that I did, and then thought, man, what was I doing that 4.5 hours? That was nonsense. This is what that was. But yeah, if you haven't been reading Absolute Wonder Woman, you should give it a try. And even if it is something in the app, because I do believe the first issue has hit the app in the regular deal. If you have the Ultra, you can read everything but this issue this month. And I thought at the beginning, I really did like it from the get-go, but it did have a weird start with the Tetracide, the 4-killer. I was not really down with that. That was not really great, but it was just there to kind of be a prop to show Diana's, weapons, also really to show that magic arm, I think. So you have it starting now. Next phase, we'll get Hayden Sherman back, and I really can't wait. It's one of my favorite books out right now, but we'll move on to the next book, and the next book is Green Lantern, number 22. Jeremy Adams and Xermanic go on art. You end up having what I thought was a misplay at first. At the end of the last issue, it's like, oh, here we go. We're going to fight Hector Hammond. And that was in the solicits. I'm like, do we really want to do that right now? We're doing the Fractured Spectrum stuff. And boy, that could wait. You get this Fractured Spectrum. It's cooking, as they say. And then finish that, because Hector Hammond, huge thing with the Green Lanterns. And then when you get into this, it was weird, because I'm saying that, but then once you get into the book, and then Hector Hammond is kind of in and out real quick, then I thought, man, that's a shame. We should have got more of Hector Hammond. But again, I think that he'll come back, but I also think that it should have been something later anyway. But what I did like about this issue is that Jeremy Adams continues to have a lot of fun. Xermanic Go has great art, and with the guest stars, because you end up getting Dan Garrett, the original Blue Beetle, in a weird way with Odyssey. If you're reading the book, and Odyssey I really like, but she kind of shows a different side that I was like, ooh, you're going to get slapped. And then at the end, I don't want to spoil too much, because at the end, Hal goes somewhere that you would never think he would go with two characters that I didn't think would show up in this book. And I was like, holy crap, that it's so crazy. It reminds me a lot of early World's Finest by Mark Waid. It also reminds me of an event. It actually feels like an event. The amount of characters and the different characters and what they're doing, while they do try to go and get the materials to get the batteries going and to get all the different color cores back, because they did say, hey, you got to get all the cores back or else this whole fractured spectrum, it's going to really, really go bad, while you end up having Saruman or Nate Dogg. He's kind of, woe is me going. And one of the things that I do like about Nate is the play that he just kind of wants it to end. It's not like he wants to take over the world. He actually thinks Starbreaker is just going to end it all, and that's what he wants. But there is kind of a play that I thought might be a bit telegraphed, because in the issue, Carol ends up doing a little thing with the power. She goes, oh man, and I'm not going to say everything, but the idea, man, I never tried that power before. And it seems like it's really set up to just be 100%. That's how Nate Dogg's going to get out of all of this. But we'll see. And I'm looking at the chat again. And Dungeon Crawler Carl says, Manhunter is definitely 311 favorite comic. Okay. And Adams does a good job introducing elements to pick back up later, says JK. And yeah, the deal of what Carol does, I think, will end up being 100% how Nate Dogg kind of gets out of the deal. And yeah, but moments, I hope I'm saying that right. Green Lantern was great. Also, it has been a really fun series. Yeah, and with it, there have been some wonky little things. I'm telling you, the whole thing, and I like Teen Lantern. But the idea of Teen Lantern having the gauntlet, the gauntlet was destroyed. Also, that whole play of her being this, she hacked it. It always felt weird. So there was a little hand waving at some points, but a lot of it was to just get things rolling. And a lot of the stuff that came out of that War Journal by Philip Kennedy Johnson. I know that people love Philip Kennedy Johnson, but that stuff at points was, to me, it was unreadable. So you had to make heads or tails of that as well, which you did. You have Ellie, the Construct sister, that is definitely not going to go bad, because that never goes wrong when a Green Lantern makes a construct of somebody who's dead. Never goes wrong. Right? And George says, Jim, did you see Dynamite is pulling a Marvel and rebooting Space Ghost with the same creative team? Yeah. And the weird thing is, again, I don't like David Pepose, but I love Space Ghost. It's really good. And I thought, oh man, that sucks. When it came out, I'm like, oh man, it's rebooting. Like, everybody likes it though. And I actually thought of it as a way of like, oh my God, it's like with Jeremy Adams on Flash. Like, he gets pulled off the book and you get Cy Spurrier. Now everybody wants, Jeremy Adams back. But I was like, oh man, that's a shame. And I went and looked, I'm like, oh no, it's not a shame. They're just rebooting it. And the new #1. It's one of those weird plays. Marvel does it way too much. I mean, we're doing it with Fantastic Four coming up. But I guess if you're an indie company and Dynamite, where there is there is word of mouth. But at this point, I think that they're worried that the word of mouth, it's too late and people won't go back and search out the #1 and 2 and whatever. So I get it, but it still feels weird. It always feels weird when they do something like that, because what you end up thinking then is, oh, this is an artificial way to get sales because it's not doing well. But Space Ghost, not good. Space Ghost is good. It's really good. And David Peephole. Here's the Fear Monarch said, and he also said War Journal fell off a damn cliff. Whew, it was tough. And that's a book that Eric, when we were doing the podcast together, boy, I leaned on him hard, because I couldn't even tell you what was even going on at points. But it does feel desperate. It feels like, oh my God, but it feels desperate in a way of being desperate to get a good book in people's hands. So maybe that's a little bit more positive way of saying it, because it is really good. And I do think that they're just hoping a new #1 will get it in some people's hands. And then going forward, it'll just go from there. But it usually doesn't work out that way. It usually is one of those things, is like Dynamite, whatever their sales are or whatnot, I don't know that they're going to change it, that much. Now, they'll probably have 1 billion #1s and or variant covers and things like that. So we'll see. But it is weird. The next book from DC, though, is Superman Number 25, Joshua Williamson and Dan Mora, Eddie Barrows, Jamal Campbell. You have a bunch of artists on this. And when you go through it, it's pretty cool because they each have their own little thing. It all makes sense. It's not even the idea of all of it being, oh, dream sequence or this or that. You do have flashback Eddie Barrows as part of it, but what this issue does, and I like it, I liked it a lot, even though I am one of the few people who actually like Lex being good, and you might end up getting mad at me for saying that, and then for that I'll say I'll slap you one. But then after we're done that, slap people like a fun slap. What I like isn't just Lex being good. What I love seeing is Lex struggling to be good and struggling to convince everybody that he can be good. Overall, just like Norman Osborn trying to be good over in the ASM deal, it doesn't make any damn sense. I mean, these characters have so much blood on their hands that there is no possible way that it's going to work out that way. It's almost like when you go with the, I guess, Dan Waters Two-Face book, where Two-Face is there. Yep, I'm going to show everybody, and I'm going to be DA again. I'm like, you're not going to be DA. You have done way too many things that are real wrong. You're not going to be able to. And plus, look at you. You're a mess. Nobody's going to like looking at you every day. So in that, though, Lex being good is kind of eye-rolling. But when you do get to it, I love a character like Lex doing this, especially because he always thinks everything he does is right. And so when he does things like he has in the last bunch of issues, he's not doing it to, hey, I'm evil. It's not even the idea of reacting in an evil way. It's just he thinks that's the right way. And I think he has a point. Because when you go into this, first off, you see, oh, get this. Lex was always trying to dupe Superman. He was always trying to be bad. And really what it feels like to me, because it doesn't feel like that's how this was supposed to play out. That's just me. But what it feels like is after the failed Batman and Catwoman wedding, oh, get this, Bane was doing it all along. Oh, look at Bane. And when you end up having that sort of story, like, please, somebody go back and show me all those times in those 50 issues of Tom King's Batman run where you're like, oh, man, look, Bane was in that panel. We didn't see it. Oh, man, that was Bane. No. It was because everybody was flipping out. And Tom King said, oh, but half the story's done. We still have another half. Oh, my God, don't get upset. We'll end up doing this, that, and the other thing. This one feels like it's, yeah, you know what? Lex being good, it's not really hitting with people. We have the whole Superman stuff coming up, and people would rather see Lex as a villain. So let's just say all along he was duping. I really think that it makes a lot of the stuff leading up to it a little less for me, but only because I was enjoying it. Now, we had this before at the end of the DCYOU into Rebirth. It was Sexy Lexi, Super Lex, where the best was when he bought the Daily Planet only because the Daily Planet owned Superman's cape, and that's all he wanted. It was one of the best plays ever. He got the cape. But I do like that deal. And Fearmonic says, go back in the first 49 issues and find where Bat Cat had any good chemistry. But they said Bat and Cat. That isn't that the chemistry? Bat, and then they argued, was it on the boat or in the alley? Oh my goodness, like how can you get better than that? The boat or the alley? Oh, it drove me nuts. JK said he likes good Lex. And again, it's not just good Lex in the way of like Lex is just 100% good. It's always cool to think, oh man, there he goes again. He's that. And I love when writers can play that gray area. They did it at one point with Norman and Peter, where Peter would think, oh man, I knew it. You're doing this. And Norman's like, what are you talking about? That's for this. But it was kind of forced that way. But I do like seeing a character. One of the characters I do like that a lot of people end up pish-poshing is Harley Quinn, because I think that there's been a lot of garbage writers who wrote Harley Quinn. But what I like Harley as, not just, and people say, I like her as a villain. Well, I like her in between, because I like her trying to be a hero, because I would think that she would try. She ends up breaking away from the Joker, and she's trying to be good, but she can't. It's just not in her nature. She does not know how to be good, but yet she's trying, which makes things even worse. So you end up having issues. Matt Fisher, he said, Jimmy, you're still dreaming. Wake up. I might be. I did want to take a nap, but I knew if I fell asleep, I was never going to wake up. But in this whole Superman deal, and I'll get back to the chat in a second, in this whole Superman issue, which was a milestone, 25. And I was afraid we were going to get like a bunch of different stories because the cover did kind of push that. You see Jimmy Silver Banshee, you see Perry once again winning the election. He's won it like 7 times now, it seems. But when you go in, it does show that Lex was always, prepared to dupe Superman, to kind of go against that. And then in that, Mercy had let out the black-suited clone Lex. Ends up where that Lex is completely insane. Ends up cloned with, spliced Bizarro stuff in it. Now, one of the things that I thought, usually when Lex ends up doing a Bizarro, it's usually the clone. It's usually not Bizarro World Bizarro. It's usually a clone Bizarro who does not talk backwards, ends up just kind of being slow. One of the cool stories I thought in the New 52 leading into Rebirth was that play that Lex had a clone, almost like looked at it as a son at one point. It was kind of cool. But you're going to go straight up, backwards talk, because that's the big wow moment of, oh no, look. And that thing was breaking apart this whole clone. So while this is all going on, you end up having this clone Lex, bad Lex, Lexl, what was it, or XL? I don't even know. What's it called? Susgabe kept calling it Pixel, and I kept getting angry because I couldn't remember. But you end up where Matt Fisher says Australian Redhead Lex was the best. Yeah, that was pretty good. Now, with that, in my mind, the whole play at the end is, should Lex, what are you going to do about this clone? It's evil. It's over the top. I do not think that Lex or clones have a soul. That's just me, right? Also, he's redheaded, so he doesn't have a soul, just to go with Matt Steele. But it ends up threatening John. Lois goes supernova. And one of the big plays, I saw a bunch of people reporting, oh my God, finally, Lois's powers are gone. It did look like it was the Jeff Johns supernova when he had that New 52 Superman book with John Romita Jr. And they introduced that new power, that complete supernova, where the Superman would lose his powers for a little, it pretty much depletes the battery completely. And then eventually they come back, which I think is what's going on. I think that at the end, it was like, okay, look at that. The idea that she lost her powers, people start, oh man, that's great because I hate her having powers and whatnot. I don't know why she has powers. It's kind of weird. But I think they'll come back in time for Zod to come and try to get his powers back. So we'll see about that. But in the meantime, Lex ends up doing something that Superman is like, oh no, this is the worst. You can't do that. You jerk. You're the worst, Lex. I hate you. You're evil. And I had a debate with everybody I talked to. I'm the only one who sat there. I'm like, what else is he going to do? There's Lex. He had to do the hard thing. He made the hard decision. In the meantime, my big thing about it is, what would they have done with this clone? What are you going to do with this clone? It's not anything that you're going to ever be able to go through. This thing is bad. You're going to do a couple things. Put it in a bottle like they did with Doomsday and the Radiant, but Superman didn't like that either. Or you're going to get, what else but the Phantom Zone? And he doesn't really want to throw things in the Phantom Zone now, even though they made it nicer, they said in that stupid Bendis story. Or not Bendis, Wade story, where they ended up where Connell, or no, actually it's what's his name? Yeah, it is when he's like the warden. But even so, all of this going down, there's nothing else you can do. I know that, Superman's not going to abide by killing anything, but maybe look the other way. Maybe sit there and say, well, I don't think that was the only slip, but I don't know what else you would have done. I really don't know. And all it is completely is just the way that Lex is going to go back to being complete evil. Because remember, even though Lex ended up, kind of going through this thing and saying, hey, I'm going to be bad eventually, and this is a dupe, the Lex in the book, the real Lex, he is kind of good still. He lost his memory, but now you have to get so that he's like, okay, now he's evil. And I think the evil Lex is just going to be the Lex that says, screw it. I'm really sick and tired of you, yelling about me getting things done, because legit that Lex has saved Metropolis big time twice now in like a hot weekend. So I'm all for that clone just getting its head blown off. So that's me. That is just me. And Japanic actually says, just jumping in, are people here liking Last Days of Lex? I bought issue 1 when it was released. Well, we'll go to the next book on the list. There's a segue because the next book on my list is Superman, The Last Days of Lex Luthor, number 3, written by Mark Waid, art by Brian Hitch. I know there's a lot of people, probably a lot of people listening right now that don't like Mark Waid. They've made a stand. They're not going to read Mark Waid books. I believe they have now missed out on one of the better stories we've had in a couple of years. I say that because the first issue came out like a year and a half ago. So there you go. But I loved it. It was my favorite book of the week. I thought it was great. I thought the idea of the story of Superman is losing his powers while his whole thing gets switched up and Lex is getting that, ability to absorb the solar energy. But the problem is he's not a superhero. He doesn't have powers. So it's just making him a furnace and he's burning out. And when you go through this issue, you have a lot of really good character moments, a lot of feels between Lex and Clark, two kids. They were best friends at one point. They fell apart, and through it, you had Clark really wondering, maybe if I would have told Lex, this would have been different. Even says at the end, hey, Lex, if I would have told you my secret, maybe we would have both realized that we weren't alone, because it really showed also that Clark felt alone with his secret and being an alien and things like that. And Lex actually says, I don't think it would have changed anything. But at one point, because the big bad in this ends up being, I don't want to spoil everything because I do think people are going to wait and get in trade. But Brainiac shows up, and while all these things are going on, Lex is mad. Brainiac wants to take over the world. And Lex is mad not because of that. He's mad because it looks like he duped Lex, and Lex won't stand for that. But at one point near the end, you end up where Lex says to Brainiac, listen, I hate you. I'm going to take you down. And the thing he says last, the worst of everything you've done, you almost made me and Superman best friends again. And I'm not going to allow that to happen. It was almost heartbreaking. But you end up where there's a plan that Lex has, and he's going to sacrifice himself, but then Superman does. But it all ends up by the end where it's an end. I mean, I don't see you being able to ever have a sequel to this, because there is, like, at the end, it's not like a Hollywood ending, but it was a really, really good ending. Brian Hitch's art's great. And I really think that it's one of those books that it was really, really good. The second issue I was a little bit down on. I still liked it, but it was more of a, hey, let Lex go. Almost like Lex was a cuck. He had to actually go through a bunch of things where everybody's like, man, that Superman's the greatest. And Lex is all pissed off. But you were waiting for it to turn that Lex was doing something bad, set this up. I mean, the idea that Lex would give himself a virus, a thing, just so that he could dupe Superman. And even if he died, he'd be happy that it plays out like I thought something like that was going to happen. But there was a couple twists and turns. And then at the end, really a twist at the end to kind of get a smile, but a tear on your face as well. It was really, really good. And again, just to talk about it, and Dungeon Crawler Carl said, is it Elseworlds? Main canon, it's Elseworlds. It does take place somewhere in the 90s. You can tell from some of the costumes and things like that. But you end up where it's really good. I suggest getting it. If you haven't gotten it and you want to get it in trade, it's going to be really good read altogether. But one of the big things, again, I've talked about this, and I'm sure that most people know it, but the first issue came out. They released, you had Mark Waid and Brian Hitch have been working on it for quite some time, a couple of years or so. They finished the first issue, and it was one of those, okay, when we have a chance, we'll get back to that. We'll get whatever. And then DC released it without them even knowing. They had no idea that it was coming out. It was released. The way that Mark Waid was talking, like they didn't even know until, New Comic Book Day, where they found out, what? This came out. They were not ready for that to come out. They had barely started working on the second issue, because in the meantime, you end up having Brian Hitch doing, Venom stuff, and then also going to Ghost Machine. And I do think that one of the things why it came out, they had to get it out, because if it didn't come out, he wouldn't have been able to, like, I don't know the ins and outs, but Ghost Machine, he is exclusive to Ghost Machine. But if you have things still, you can finish things. And I do think that DC freaked out and like, we better get this out. Like they didn't talk to either Hitch or Wade, but we got to get it out so it's on the books that he's still doing it. And then you go forward with it. I'm sure that if it was one of those things that Wade and Hitch wanted to do anyway, you would have been able to maybe go to Jeff Johns and say, listen, we were working on this. We're actually in the process of doing it. It's just going to come out a little bit. But I think that that's what the deal with that. And Japanic said he'd rather take Clark Kent hair over Ram V hair. And how dare you? How dare you say that? Clark Kent hair is pretty good, the squiggle and the front, but that luscious hair that Ram V has, the envy of every comic book creator ever. And me. Oh, that hair. Luscious hair he has. But yeah, I'm looking at the chat right now. And yeah, like Wade is good at Superman and Hitch's art's great. I do think it's going to be a really, really good trade that I think people should check it out. But again, if you're against Mark Waid and you don't want to read it and you never read it, that's fine. That's fine. It's one of those that it is really good, though. And it's one of those where if down the line, somehow he apologizes or does some good that you're like, you know what? He's back in my good graces. Because a lot of people who are really making a stand now, they were reading his World's Finest because they're like, well, you know, he's a jerk, but I'll give it a try. And then once again, he said some things that offended people. And then they stop. But yeah, if down the line, he ends up where you're like, you know what? Guy's pretty cool. Go to this real quick. And it's a cool play. It's kind of a thing that you could pick up at any time. It's not tied into a current continuity. It kind of feels classic. It's one of those that, again, I'm sure that somebody has looked into it and said, okay, this costume here is that. And one of the big plays is in one of the last panels, you do see the Lady Dr. Fate. So that kind of puts it in a time frame. Then you can look at Firestorm's old costume. All right, it's there. You could kind of figure out. I said just off the top of my head, 1998 is what I said. I don't know. I just made that up. But it's somewhere like that. Yeah, Fear Monarch said Wade is a great superhero writer. That's why it hurts. He's a goofball. Why I won't run out to pick up ongoings, but I can justify a trade. Yeah, likes the cheesecake. And JK said, that was me, enjoyed World's Finest until. And yeah, a lot of people did that. And also, now, since you have left it, JK, I guess, it hasn't been great. I think that book has gone on for too long. I think that you have this this event going on right now with that in the Justice League. And I think when that event's done, I think World's Finest will end. The book kind of stayed around for a little bit too much. And Wade on Shazam never panned out for anything. And then Josie Campbell ended up not being great either. And is it Josie or Sophie? I get them mixed up all the time. But we're going to move on to the next book. The next book, I believe, will be a Marvel book. Lo and behold, holy moly, there's some Marvel books. These are two that I've liked pretty much since they started. One is ending, but the one that isn't is Eddie Brock Carnage #3. And really, there's some big books that came out this week at Marvel. Are they? Like an ASM, One World Under Doom, and lo and behold, I like Eddie Brock Carnage #3, which I think is pretty darn good with Charles Soule and Jesus Saez. And it says even in the solicit, Carnage versus Bushwhacker. That's pretty much what it is. But I do like the back and forth between Eddie and Carnage. And I do like the play of Carnage book being kind of, not even kind of, it's Dexter. But I do like seeing Eddie trying to kind of rein in Carnage, though, he's not exactly full powered. So they're kind of working together, but using it to take care of serial killers and using that play, which again, the play is Carnage, like, hey, when I get stronger, I'm going to rip you apart and things like that, because obviously Carnage, he likes the serial killers, but Eddie doesn't. So it's pretty cool. Again, there's not much to say about it in my mind, but it was really, it is a good book. And I did like the fight scenes and the back and forth, but I really do like the back and forth between Carnage and Eddie. I think is a pretty cool. Now, I will say one thing that's worrying me. I think that each issue that, 1, 2, and 3, I loved 1. 2 was a little bit and 3 was a little bit, so I think it better pick up the pace a bit, or start something that will wow me again, because I don't want it to fall off of the best of list, because I do think it's something that people should check out. My next book at the Marvel, and the last book at the Marvel, is Sabretooth, The Dead Don't Talk, number 5. It finishes. It's the conclusion to the mini. I thought it was really good. Again, it is full out Gangs of New York with Sabretooth, but you have the Crocodilian in this. We see a little bit of the past, how the Crocodilian came to be, and then have a final battle and things like that. It all wraps up, but at the end, you even have Sabretooth. It almost feels like, to me, at the end, it's like Sabretooth doing all this. Man, I've got the 5 boroughs. I'm in. What's this picture? Who's that? Wolverine? Yeah, sayonara, suckers. I'm going to fight Wolverine. I kind of had that feel at the end, like, oh, no. Now he's just going to go off. But I did like it. I did like it. Again, it's one of those where if you get a chance, if the trade or if you read it in the app, I think it's well worth it. It's one of those side things. Doesn't really feel like it really happened, whatever, but it's one of those it's a really cool story, and ends up where the premise, I thought, when I first read the first issue, it was one of those where I said, like, oh, this is just Gangs of New York with Sabretooth. And then, like, the next issue, I said, oh, this is Gangs of New York with Sabretooth. And then finally, I'm like, man, this is Gangs of New York with Sabretooth. And I ended up where me and I think it was Sully who reviewed it. We had a review here on the channel, and I said at one point, hey, I hate saying it. And it was something that I think it was Scott Snyder said to me at one point. And, he gets a little sensitive. But you end up where if you say something like, oh, man, that book is this meets that. Oh, my God, this new band, it's the Beatles meet Metallica. Well, what you're kind of saying a lot of times is, yeah, they're not really their own thing. You end up having to compare. But a lot of times that's a shortcut to kind of tell people how great something is. But I always am wary about it because I forget what it was. But Scott Snyder got a hold of me when I said that about somebody. And he's like, hey, don't, try not to do that. It makes it less. And it's not this. And I'm like, whatever. But I do worry about that. So in our review, I said, I hate to say it because of that. And I explained that whole thing, that convoluted crap that I just said. But I said, I hate to say it because it makes it seem like, oh, it almost feels like the idea of, oh, the writer didn't have any imagination, so they just did that. So we end up putting out the review, and lo and behold, Frank Thierry, who writes the book, ends up and said, hey, listen, don't worry about that. Don't worry about calling it Sabretooth in the Gangs of New York, because that was the pitch. I went in and said, hey, everybody, Sabretooth, Gangs of New York, boom. And they went with it. And I thought it was done really well. Again, it took me an issue. If you were like me, I read the first issue. I'm like, you know what? I don't know. This is kind of weird. And the idea that it's so much Gangs of New York and it seems out of time and something like all that stuff. And so I stopped reading it. I didn't actually read the second issue when it came out. The third issue then hits, and lo and behold, Sully's telling me it's great. Gray was telling me it's great. So I'm like, screw it. I'll read it. I'm like, you know what? This is getting pretty good. And by the end, I liked it. And it was one of those, I think, that as it went on, you don't get this often, but it actually got better. So I really did like that. And there's Jerpatic says, Lars sues the Beatles for defending Napster, probably. Paul McCartney's there. I like the Napster, love. Yeah, I don't think he'd like the Napster. Paul is in a little bit of a conundrum. Ringo, everything just doesn't bother Ringo. That guy is the nicest guy, has unlimited energy at 83. But Paul has a little problem because, they wanted to do that last song. So they end up getting John's voice and they end up, doing AI stuff to it. Where in the meantime, every artist is against AI. So now he's got this weird thing of well, we used AI, but I'm against AI. And now he's really trying to go, even though I think Paul's a great guy and he doesn't have to hem and haw or whatever. The guy could just throw him money. He's like Spanky, throwing money out the window, that guy. Holy moly. And just imagine if Michael Jackson didn't take Paul's advice and buy the whole Beatles catalog, things would be even more coming up him. But yeah, there's the Beatles meets Metallica Ween. It might be, but yeah, so, and this, you end up, Jerpatic said, this meets that marketing tool is old. It is old. And I think that a lot of people, when their things are, movies are said to be that, it is not the creator that usually is like, yeah, everybody tell him this. That is a marketing guy who is trying to put it at the base level for a dummy like me. So the creators are probably like, oh man, you're making it less. But again, when you end up talking about, say, A Strange Academy, a book that I really enjoyed when it was just the first Strange Academy, and not that nonsense that came after. But you're like, it's Harry Potter. It's Harry Potter meets the Marvel Universe, and I think that that's a compliment. But then you get like, again, it's like I write a book and they're like, it's like a shit sandwich that meets, a bucket of spew. And that's not good. I don't need that. Now, I say that, and I was going to mention earlier, now I kind of just rung a bell in my head. It seems still that every time I put a video out, I lose a subscriber. I think I know why. Talking shit sandwiches. That's what you get. That's what you get. Also, I think people are like, screw this guy. He's got 7-hour podcasts. That guy's a maniac. But yeah, and Chirpanic says, I wasn't aware of Sabretooth Mini. The title is awesome. Sounds like a spaghetti western. It's really good. It sounds like a spaghetti western, but get this. It's Sabretooth meets Gangs of New York. Is what it is. You have the 5 boroughs. You have a really cool play, and Sabretooth in it. He loved and lost. He did, and you see him get really angry at this crocodilian is the deal. But we're going to go to what is the last book, I believe, of the show. It's a book that I really do like. It's a book by a guy who a lot of people are down on. I keep saying like it's a mystery. It's right there. It's the only indie book on this, spread deal that I made, this collage, like I'm in like 6th grade art class. But I say all this and I am not even prepared. I didn't even hit the thing. Now, in this whole play is if you end up wondering like, oh man, why is Jim only talking one indie book? It's because Jim only read one indie book. I didn't have enough time. I'm going to end up, and it's the funny play is like after I do the best of, I'll probably end up before bed reading the G.I. Joe Real American Hero Roadblock. I did page through it. I thought it was decent. I can't really say full out if it would be best of, though the idea of this whole, silent issue gimmick, I get it, but sometimes there's explosions and things going on. I'm like, it's not. Now, usually it's funny because I usually think of a silent issue as just dialogue. It's really hard. What are we going to have every issue in space? That's where, they can't hear you scream. You could do that. That's what I would do. If they told me to make a silent issue every time in space, maybe underwater, but then you'd still hear stuff. So, but I usually would go with no dialogue. Again, one of the things, I'd keep bringing it up, but one of my favorite things was, I forget which book it was. I wish I could remember. It was in the New 52. And me and Eric were doing our podcast. I think we had just started the podcast too. And one of the issues was touted as a mostly silent issue. I'm like, can you look at everything and say it's mostly silent or mostly not silent? Such a weird play. It made me laugh so much. But lo and behold, my last book and the indie book coming out from Image, Bug Wars #3, Jason Aaron and Leslie Hung and Rachel Cohen is who they have listed here. In the meantime, boy, I like the book. I like it a lot. If you ended up looking at the first issue, if you looked at the cover, you heard the premise. Hey, get this. These kids and their mom end up going back to this house that their dad used to go and do, some bug experiment, whatever, and the guy died. So they're going back because they're, out of money, whatnot. And lo and behold, there's a whole kingdom of bugs that are fighting a war, unseen by the naked eye. And you're like, okay, that sounds like a lot of, things that would be like a kid's play. You would have this maybe a manga, one of those where all of a sudden you're playing a video game, then you indeed become the slug, right, in the dungeon. I like the one. I remember one, and some of those are the greatest names because they're like 80 words long. But I think there was one is when I became like a vending machine in the dungeon. Really? That's what you do? But it feels like that. But once you get into it, you're like, holy crap, because it's really mature. And it ends up having a lot of the bad words that you're not allowed to say when you're younger and things like that. This issue, it got a little bit too far. I almost didn't put it as in the best of because it did go a little too far. I made the joke earlier today that where it went too far was that it ended up having some crazy activities that maybe the only person who might like it is Johnny Storm with his centipede lover. There's like bug orgies in this and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't really need that. I am a bit of a prude, I admit it. But yeah, it just seemed a little bit too much. It just seemed a little bit. But I still really like it. I still enjoy it. And it's Jason Aaron, so he's hit or miss for me, but most of the hits are when he's not doing Marvel. And I don't even, is that Namor book still going? Because boy, I got bored out of my gourd reading that one. I couldn't take it. And some of the past things that he did, some of the things at the end really nailed down a lot of people saying that they didn't want to read anymore Jason Aaron. I mean Punisher for the most part, but his stuff at the Absolute Superman's just getting better. I really like it. And Batman Offworld, I thought was great. It was excellent. I thought that the last issue was a little rushed, and then we had that weird delay with it as well. But overall, I thought that it was really, really good. And yeah, I think that Jason Aaron is doing pretty good. Japanic says, damn it, Jim and Gang, I'm fighting hard not to pick up Bug Wars 1 to 3 at the shop. I got to keep my pull lean after reading 1 today. So damn good it is. Now, I will tell you, Japanic, this is the problem with it. And Dungeon Crawler Carl said Namor really picked up. I hope so, because I did not. I think the second issue, I ended up giving it somewhere along the line of like a 3. Like, I didn't like it at all. I don't know which one. If you're like, oh my God, the third issue, that was great. Why'd you do that? Whatever issue it was. But I was like, I'm done. I am completely done with it. But Japanic saying about the deal with Bug Wars, I will tell you that Bug Wars #1 is great. And then Bug Wars #2, it's good. And then Bug Wars #3, it's like, yeah, it's still good, but it's got to pick out. There's a lot of books like that, but it did end up where that whole plan, JK, is going out of the deal. All right, I will talk to you, JK. And yeah, so all of this going on, and you do have, Japanic also said, mostly he's a Power Fantasy fan. Love the 3 to 4 per issue read. Make the writer feel obscure. Yeah, I'm not a big. I didn't really like it, but I'm not. I think it is Kieran Gillen. I'm not a real big fan. My man Ruben loves it, but and then Aaron's defense, I think writing a main for Namor would be tough. It just seemed odd. I just didn't really love it. But that's it for my best of books. And again, there are some things that I still have to read. I know that that's the play. And a lot of times I wish that I did read everything. I wish I had the time or the gumption and, attention span to do that. But some of the things that I will be reading that I do think will probably be darn good is, say, a G.I. Joe. That came out. That's a big one this week. I think that's about it. I think of all the ones that I'm like, oh man, I got to read that. Both of the G.I. Joes, the Roadblock and the regular series. Actually, I am going to read, though I'm not a big Dennis Camp fan. I did not like Absolute Martian Manhunter. I didn't like either issue, but that's me, and it's just a person. I think that book is one of those where a lot of people will end up fighting about a book like that because besides the whole deal, it really, really comes down to personal taste. I mean, a book that wacky is so personal deal. You know what I mean? And I think I said it during the Absolute show. To me, it's one of those books that you definitely can tell if you were going to like it or not, or at least stick with it like within a couple of pages. And I kind of could tell that this isn't my cup of tea. And Japanic said, Jim, are you a Justice League United fan or Unlimited? Yeah, this issue was pretty good. It didn't make the cut. Me and Greg came up with the idea that a book that when we're reviewing it has to get to about the time, like an 8 out of 10. I do think I went 7 or 7.5 for this issue. I mean, this issue was all about the idea of where Airwave kind of went bad. And boy, I don't know why, but to me, it's like, so what you're telling me is he's real dumb. I like where Grodd is like, hey, kid, come over here. And then he dupes him with mind control and things like that. But he says, hey, you go to the Watchtower. And by the way, all of these heroes, even the ones that you know and love, like, say, a Superman, they're not on the up and up. They're actually like evil overlords. But you go watch him, and then I'm going to help you later, and makes up a lie that he's dying, things like that. And I'm like, really? Because there's a lot of people on that Watchtower that are friends of yours. And if you end up, and I'm talking from the Lost Children, somebody like a Stargirl who's in the issue, you see her flying around. Like, if you are that concerned and really believe Grodd, wouldn't you go to them and say, hey, by the way, you should watch out because you'd worry about your friends? And even the idea of, say, Aquaman, I think it was, who kind of befriended him in the Absolute Power. And I just thought that they would go over, like, he would at least talk to one person, but he got dupe. But you end up where, I do like it. I actually like World's Finest. And I think this event's pretty cool. And I like that it's running through Grodd. I think that's really cool. I thought it was going to be, here we go, Legion of Doom, Lex. But no, it's Grodd who's setting things up. And in this issue, there's a really funny moment when Grodd's like, I'm going to get the gang back together. I'm going to get the Legion of Doom. And then he starts looking around. He's like, wait a second. Lex is good, but he's also what Sinestro's a Green Lantern again. He gets so mad because nobody is quite what they were. I think he says, like, Black Man, I don't even know what the hell that guy's doing. So that's why he has to go back in time. That's why he's using airwaves. So I thought it was pretty cool with that. But, you end up where, it says, Japanic says, with all that I want to read, going subscription and lean shop pull works well. Yeah, so it does work well. So with all that, though, that is my books of the week. And the things, again, when I say, oh, that's a book of the week, this week, I think I gave the Green Lantern a 9. I think I gave Superman Last Days of Lex Luthor, I think that was a 9.5. I think the Superman was an 8.8, somewhere along there. So even right there, and then I think I gave the Absolute Wonder Woman a 9 or a 9.3, something like, maybe a 9.5, I don't remember. But it was like, I haven't had a week like that in quite some time. Like, I have been liking the books a lot more recently, but, I try to make it, I'm a cynical guy. I'm from the Philadelphia area. We throw snowballs at Santa Claus. So I'm like, you have to really wow me to get a 9 or above, and I had a bunch this week. I thought it was really good. Now, you also had such books as One World Under Doom, ASM, and, say, Power Girl. Those were not good. And those ended up getting scores for me. I believe all 3 of those end up not even adding up to 10 or even 9. I don't think they did. They might actually add up to 7. So, yeah. And Japanic asked if anyone's reading Green Lantern Corps. I actually like Green Lantern Corps more than Green Lantern. And I'm surprised because I thought it was the way that it was spelled out. I think it's Morgan Hampton doing a lot of the writing. And I was worried. But it's good. I really like the Green Lantern Corps. And I really do like Green Lantern, too. I'm not saying I don't like the Green Lantern book, but boy, I really, really like the Corps book. So both of those books are really good. Fear Monarch said one world under snooze. Yeah, it's like one world under from the headlines that nobody really needs to deal with in comics because we have to deal with them every day. Japanic said he read 1 and 2. I do really like Green Lantern Corps. It's probably my second favorite book. I'm still going to put in the whole deal going on of the All In. I still like Batman and Robin the most because I'm a Damian fan. But Green Lantern Corps is right there now. Green Lantern's right there. Superman always is close as well. With Joshua Williamson, sometimes he does things get rushed. One of the things I didn't mention, but in the Superman book this week, Marilyn Moonlight shows up and does nothing. She gives a horsey ride to Lex. That's all she does. After the horsey ride, she's like, it's morning time. I better get moving. I'm like, oh, goodness. But and I did mention this morning the idea, and Japanic just said Hampton and Adams are good together. I do think that maybe this is their way to get a little bit of experience with Adams working with somebody, telling them what to do and whatnot, because I think that's going on to maybe get him ready later and get him, in that mode that maybe he can do an event later, though I'd rather they don't do events, but that would be fine. And Philip Kennedy Johnson's Batman and Robin. Yeah, that's what I do like. I think that there's a problem though that this whole Memento story is going to really be padded out because I think it's just going to go until September and then there's going to be a change. Philip Kennedy Johnson, we may actually get what we talked about earlier, and maybe I'll be happy. But we might get a new number one with same creative teams with maybe the Green Arrow with Chris Condon and Philip Kennedy Johnson on Batman and Robin. But we'll see. They might change some things, but I really do like the whole play. And I thought that what Philip Kennedy Johnson did really well is the first issue. I thought he got Damian wrong. I'm like, oh my God, that's ridiculous. And then he like twisted it back to make it really good. Oh, I see what he did. It was pretty good, though. At one point, you do have, and people have argued with me. I'm a big Damian fan. So Batman, when he says at the one point a couple issues ago, hey, why don't we just take time out? Just me and you. We'll go out and get burgers or tacos. I'm like, Damian is a vegetarian. What are you talking about? I actually thought it was there. So you're like, he doesn't even know his son. And then people are like, no. He probably meant vegetarian burgers. And I'm like, nah, don't give me that. I was a vegetarian for 3 years. I wouldn't just say to somebody, let's go get burgers. I might have become a vegetarian to be more like Damian. I didn't. I didn't at all. I love the problem is when you tell somebody you're I'm no longer. I end up where I did kind of fall off that one, but I was for years. And when you would tell people, I never would like to tell people, and especially I'm on the aficionados and people are saying things or whatever. And a couple times it came up where people were like, oh man, that person's probably a vegetarian, talking about people they didn't like and some writers. And I'm like, should I tell them that? And I'm like, I think I'll keep it quiet. Finally, I told them. And the whole play was I'd already told Wes, I think a couple weeks earlier than that, and explained to him, it's no thing. I'm not like, oh my God, I don't like the treatment of this or like that. I can't even pay attention to that stuff because I'm an idiot. But it was more health things. And I have a lot of problems with my gut. So it was more for that. And I actually, if you want to know why, just to let everybody know why I'm no longer a vegetarian, I just gave up. I gave up on life. So here we are talking about comics. And as I go, I swear to God, I'm going to go, we'll put this up. I'll give it about 3 hours in the general public, the replay, and there'll be somebody who will unsubscribe. It happens every time. I guess I have that kind of jerk off voice that people just end up going against. But I was told at one point that the least important number in the YouTube game is subscribers. And in fact, if somebody doesn't like what you do, but they don't unsubscribe, that could hurt you in the end. So there you go. It could help. Yeah, Brandon says, well, meat does taste good. Now, in that, this is the best. You want to hear a progression that you'll love is vegetarian for, I do think, I'm trying to think, about 3 or 4 years. And then stop being a vegetarian, eat just good. Now I'm full out keto and all I'm doing is eating meat. And I do have to tell you that I ended up today where I had these sausages. Whew, it didn't hit me well. Also, I've been drinking that bulletproof coffee. And they tell you at the beginning when you do it, and it's something that you make where you have MCT oil, butter, grass-fed butter, please. I'm fancy. But also a little this and that, whatever. But the MCT oil I did see is like, beware, because this might cause you some gastrointestinal problems, but not in everybody. I'm like, don't even tell me not in everybody. I know it's going to happen to me. I remember if people are old enough to remember when those Alestra chips came out, I ended up where I went to my buddy's house. And really, I walked up the stairs because I had an apartment. He lived above. And he wanted to watch, he was a big Titans fan. And I'm talking, football. So we were going to watch football. I think the Titans are on like Sunday night or something like that. And we were going to watch. So I go up and he has these chips. And I'm like, oh, chips. And I start eating them. And I'm eating them. And I'm like, whew, what's going on? I mean, I had the worst like grumbling in the deal in my stomach. And I'm like, oh my God. And I went and then I'm like, what were those things? Oh, they were those Alestra chips. Like they're no fat. Like those things. Pretty much what happened to me happened to everybody. Thus, you don't see many Alestra chips around. And Brandon, actually, this is the thing, Brandon. The blueberry coffee I could still have. It's just that you can't put like creamers and sugar or whatever in this bowl. You use whatever. And the thing is, today I wanted to go get some of that blueberry coffee, but I didn't have a car because my son keeps commandeering it, taking it from me. But it would be good because the problem with in my mind, this bulletproof coffee, again, you put butter in it. You also end up you could use coconut oil, but MCT oil, you put that in, and then you kind of let it melt and stuff like that. And it's got a funky taste. So a lot of it where people said is you have to get a really strong flavored coffee, and it really takes care of that. And I was like, that blueberry coffee would go great. I'm going to go get, a blueberry coffee black, and then I'll come and make it. I go outside, and I'm like, where's the car? It was gone. The other night, my cats were about to mutiny. They hadn't had food that day, and my cat's, the one is humongous. It can't go a day without 2 meals. So the second meal, I didn't have any food. And usually I'll find something that I can kind of have them tie the day off and, whatever. Though people would tell me that tuna is not really great for cats the way that it is. It ends up giving them some problems. But in the meantime, I do look, as this is going on, I see people just leaving the deal. But I had to walk to get cat food, and the store, the Giant that I have to walk to, is like 4 miles. I'm like, I don't mind, but 4 miles for cat food, I'm like, this is nonsense, especially because I'm paying for a car. It's a rental car too, because my son wrecked the other car. Ay, ay, ay. This is the worst. And now he's saying this, Brendan, you messed me up now, because first off, everybody's leaving, but also now I want that blueberry coffee again. But again, I am going to, I'll tell you, when people will accuse, you don't really have attention deficit or whatever. Boy, I could go right now and drink 7 Red Bulls, drink 8 coffees, and I will be out cold in 2 minutes. It doesn't do that sort of deal. But says that here any kind of seafood is bad, but it's in like all the cans. LOL. Yeah, that's the thing. I like it in the can. Ooh, wait. Oh my, that's like a Sus Records deal, which I did end up messing up. I was supposed to release a song today, and I did not, so I'm going to have to do that tomorrow. But with all of that, that is it. We had a little extra. You guys tried. You tried to trigger me and tried to get more out of me. That's it. Nobody could possibly say anything else in the chat to make me continue, or could they? But I'm going to get going. I'm going to walk my dog and go to bed, because I'm going to pass out. But thanks, everybody, for watching. I hope you continue to enjoy the live streams. I love them because when I'm done, I don't have to edit them. That's that 100%. That's why I keep doing all these live streams. And again, if I do a 4.5-hour live stream, I'm done and done. I don't have to work on it. I don't have to do anything. So I love it. I love it so much, though. I do like doing the edited stuff as well. Fear Monarch said he's always had ADHD, and you got all the symptoms. Me and my friends had it so bad. And mine are getting worse. They're just getting worse by the year. It's so bad. I'd never had this many problems. But boy, and when I tell people, again, there you go. But I tell people, like, I don't watch. It's not that I don't like movies. I'm not one of those. I actually only watch the History Channel. That was funny that people used to say that, and then the History Channel became such nonsense. But, I only watch documentaries because I'm a highfalutin guy. Which you say that I am watching a World War II documentary right now. I can kind of pay attention to those. I don't know why, but it's basically frustrating where I'll go to try to watch, say, a Spider-Man movie. What is that one? Long Way Home, One Way Home. I don't know. But I end up where if I go to watch it, I get frustrated because I'll be 10 minutes in, and all of a sudden I'll realize I didn't watch 5 minutes of it. Then I'll get halfway through. I'll get tired because that's what really happens. And then I'll go to sleep and I'll never finish it. I started The Batman. I got 10 minutes in, still 10 minutes in. A lot of binoculars and heavy breathing is going on in that movie. And I think that's all I'll ever get from it. Though if I force myself in the theater, I will watch it. I like the theater experience. So, I'm kind of there, and there's nothing else to do. So with that, though, that is it now. Now, 3 minutes later, I'm now done. But I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to end up where I'm going to end up doing the Gray song, which is tradition now on everything that we do live. Fear Monarch also said, I love watching documentaries. They're just short films about weird shit, like homeless people doing extreme shopping, cart surfing. Or like, I don't know if you saw, what was it called? Murder Ball? I keep asking people this, and nobody saw it with a paraplegic basketball, I guess it was, in that. But it was like these guys, and they were all hardcore. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I'm watching the BBC documentary, the older one from the 70s, I guess it was, World at War. And what gets me in that is they're there. And, in the 70s, you're not that, you're removed, but not that removed from World War II, at least. And they end up having interviews with, like, the Japanese, general who ended up coordinating Pearl Harbor. I'm like, that guy's still around then? Like, I would have thought that guy might have been taken care of or something. It's kind of like, even they have some, because this is a BBC documentary, some of the Japanese guys are there and they're like, yeah, we hate them British. They were morons. I'm like, man, I don't think this would have went well. I think it's trying to rile people up. Hoo-wee. But you end up where Ed said he's been out chasing the cows in the pasture. He's late for the show. And we're just finishing. Chasing cows. That was what I called I shouldn't say that. I was going to say my dating in high school. That's not nice. That'll get me canceled. And says, Fear Monarch was say he was thinking of the movie Rollerball. I did like Rollerball back in the day. Not that remake, but I did watch the original with James Caan a bunch of times on HBO. I used to, as a kid, I used to put on, because it was like, oh man, I'm not supposed to be watching Escape from New York or Rollerball, or I'm trying to think of some other nonsense ones. Kill or Be, I think there was a karate movie like Kill or Be Killed Again or something. To Kill and Kill Again. I think it was. It was so cool. It was so cool. It's so bad, but I used to like it. And then Dungeon Crawler Carl says, I'm on a soft white underbelly kick. So intriguing. Yeah. So there you go. I'm going to go off now. I believe I'm going to make a keto wrap. I think I'm going to make a chicken and spinach wrap with a 0 carb, crazy wrap thing. I don't know if anybody's ever had like the real keto, like buns and things. You have to watch out, because the one bun I got, it was more expensive than any of the other ones I did. And I bit into it and it was like gum. It like stretched. That was weird. It threw me off. But that's it. Prayer of the Roller Boys. I used to go roller skating at the roller rink that we had in the next town. I used to like that. Listen to the songs and stuff. Go around, get the ladies. I didn't, but some people did. We would go with my buddy, me and my buddy Herb, who actually gave me the Lester chips. We'd go with, his sister would drive us because we were little. And his sister would drive us. And boy, you'd see her making out with like 8 different guys each night. That we'd go on Saturday night, and she would everyone, Herb would be like, who's that? Oh, it's just a friend. I'm like, oh my God, what are you, Biz Markie? A little before Biz Markie, but there you go. But that is it. And Matt says, you know what you must do. I already said it. We are going to do it. So everybody, thanks for listening. I'm really getting out of here now. My dog is looking at me side-eyed, wants me to walk her, so I'm going to get going. So thanks, everybody, for listening. I will be back tomorrow night at 9 for our preview show. Again, sometimes things don't get quite on the money for 9 because we do the Marvel show right before. It is one of those where, boom, 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 I do like 6 things in a row. That is the last thing, but when you end up where you go, I end up doing it. So if you do end up showing up and lo and behold, I'm not there right away, I will be there. If I would go to cancel something, I would definitely make sure that I let everybody know. But thanks, everybody. That is it. And I'll talk to you all later.
感動して感謝しました本当に大好きです私は普通の男ではありません私はもう本性の愛です私にからかわないでくださいそうしないとあなたは消えてしまいます私は普通の男ですでも私はあなたを殺しますだからそのまま受け取ってください